Fantastic. All right. So welcome, Marwa. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here today for this next new episode of Investor Circle. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Stuart. It's really great to be here.
It's been incredibly refreshing to meet you, and thank you so much for agreeing to be here and just kind of share a bit about your story today. Perhaps we could start, which is where we met. Can you tell us a bit about Hatch and what you're doing there?
Yeah, of course. So Hatch is an early stage VC that backs B2B SaaS startups in their SEIS and EIS rounds. So we look for ambitious founders who are experienced in their fields and who are solving a deep pain for a defined customer. I'm actually an investment analyst at Hatch, and Hatch was founded by successful entrepreneurs who have exited their own businesses several times before deciding to become investor. So what really sets us apart is that we partner closely with founders to help them scale from zero to over 1 million in ARR. We don't often require revenue to invest, and our goal is to be the supportive capital that helps a startup thrive, not just financially, but with real hands-on guidance.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, one of the reasons it was refreshing to meet you was when you told me about your backstory. So I wonder if you can share with people. I mean, my English phrase would be that you are a poacher turned gamekeeper. But tell people what your backstory is.
What a way to put it. But yeah, so before becoming an investment analyst, I was actually a founder myself. I have been through the process of starting a company, bootstrapping it for years, doing a crowdfunding campaign, and then finally raising an SEIS round. And I just find it really interesting that my first contact with Hatch was actually as a founder seeking investment. And they had just invested in a competitor company. But throughout the whole process of just initially engaging with them and then meeting Charlie, the associate, a few years later, they were always really open with feedback, and it was clear that they made quick decisions. They had a very clean investment thesis, and that's been my journey into this so far. Started the company, raised investment, grew the company for a few years. Actually, did that for 5 to 6 years before winding down and then joining Hatch as an investment analyst.
And where did you do your crowd raise?
Ooh, we did quite a few. We did quite a few. And I think part of me being a founder before means that I know firsthand that things don't always go to plan. And so we did a first Kickstarter campaign back in 2020, right as the pandemic was starting. And
Okay.
we had everything lined up, all the all the media partners and the people who were going to share articles about the campaign itself. But it was a product campaign as opposed to an equity crowdfunding campaign. And things just fell apart right as we were starting. Lockdown happened. That was the main focus, as it should have been. And it was, for me personally, a point where I needed to accept that things had not gone to plan, but focus on still getting the product to market and getting those early backers into the business, even though the crowdfunder or the Kickstarter never worked out. So
Okay.
good learning experience.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. And you, I think if I remember rightly, you raised your SEIS round with SFC. Was that right?
I did, yes.
To a very different Hatch, right? Is there any particular thing you'd highlight that's the distinct difference between Hatch and SFC?
SFC were great investors, and I was grateful to have them with me on that journey. And I think for any founders listening to this, I'd say look for that. Look for investors who will help you in your journey. I think one of the things that sets Hatch apart is the fact that the founders of Hatch are actually successful entrepreneurs. And I think it's about 72% of our portfolio companies go on to raise second rounds. We
Well, it's
provide
incredibly high stats. That's
It
amazing.
is. And I think that's a testament to the quality of the support that we offer. And just it can vary from company to company. There's no specific playbook, but we're really good at helping founders get from that zero revenue initially to 1 million ARR and putting the infrastructure in place to get to 10 million ARR.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. Well, obviously we've met each other through a particular fundraising journey, and I guess as the goal of Investor Circle is empathy, or as my favorite word in Portuguese, empatia, you know, it will be really helpful at this point is if you could share, like, how does your brain look at things that cross your table for investment? Like, how do you throw things away? How do you take things into the pile and say, yeah, this is worth it? Can you share, without giving away like the entire secret sauce of how you do stuff, but like, how do you look at these things when they arrive?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, we invest in B2B SaaS businesses and we look for three main things. The first is founders who are solving a deep pain in the present. And we define a deep pain almost like the thing that keeps you up at night at 3 a.m. You're unable to sleep until you
Oh
solve
yeah,
this
this 3
problem.
a.m. staring at the ceiling thing, right? Okay, okay.
Yes, or like a stone in your shoe. Every step that you take, it's bugging you. You cannot think of anything else until you get the stone out of your shoe. So that's the first thing. We look for founders who are solving deep pains in the present. The second is we look for defined customer personas. So if you've created a product and it is solving a pain, the next question is, do you know who is experiencing the pain? Do you know how to target the right companies and who the companies are? But then a step beyond that is the buyer, the user, and the budget holder within the company you're targeting might not necessarily be the same person. And so, do you understand who these different stakeholders are and who you should be approaching? So, if you're telling us that you've created a product for the financial services industry, but your actual clients are schools, for example, then that'll raise questions about whether you know who your target customer is and whether you're actually addressing a deep pain if your customer is not who you're saying the deep pain, you're not, if your customer is not the same persona who's experiencing the deep pain, if that makes sense. The third thing we look for is experienced teams. So founders who understand the industry or the problem. Maybe they've been in this industry for a long time. Maybe they've experienced the problem themselves. But this is really key. And Charlie, our associate at Haatch, has a really great TikTok post about this where he delves further into it. I think ultimately we back people who can adapt, learn, and execute. It's not just about the idea, it's about the founder's ability to make it happen.
But there's like several threads I want to go with this one, and I'm not quite sure which one to do first, but I think it's the pain thing, right? So pain versus gain. How do you differentiate between those two, and why is it the pain that Hatch is so fixated on? You know, somebody's enriching somebody's life, if they're amplifying the plus side, why is that not as much of an incentive as the pain, solving a pain problem?
So it can be either. It can be that you're solving a deep pain in the present, or you might be creating a 10x opportunity. The key thing for us is to see that what you're trying to do is a need to have, not a nice to have. And
Mhm.
the reason we look at the present in particular is because those problems that you have right now tend to, if I'm trying to sell you a solution for a problem you currently have, then this will resonate with you emotionally better. So the best way to show that you're solving a deep pain is to tie your solution to a metric that's important within the company. It could be revenue, for example. Does your product improve their revenue? Does it save them money? And if it does, then how much? We like founders to be able to quantify the amount. And as investors, that helps us gauge that yes, there is demand for this.
Okay, super cool, super cool. And you mentioned team, right? So if I just offer up what we talk about in Canopy and see how this fits with what you look for in the team, right? So we talk about 3 roles inside a founding team. We don't like solo founders. We like 2 or more people, but particularly 3 roles. One of the reasons we like 3 is because there's an imbalance. You can't have a a stalemate in 3. You have to make a decision. And we have 3 main roles, which is a visionary, an order filler, and a technologist. And we find that the tension between the 3 of those really helps scale up a company. So we offer that template up to every company that's coming through virtual incubation, and we say, right, let's look at your team. How are you exemplifying these 3 roles? Are you internally compromising? How are you really driving that up? And that's kind of part of our secret sauce. But how does that compare to what you're looking for in a team? And would you even contradict that and say, that's not what we're looking for at all? We're looking for yay.
I think when I hear what you're saying about the 3 founder teams from a ex-founder perspective, that would have been so useful for me. From an investor perspective, it's really reassuring to know that there are multiple people within the team, that they all understand the problem and they have clearly defined roles within the company. But like I said, as a founder, doing it on your own is really difficult. And it's actually one of the things I wish I had done something about more actively.
Okay.
So it's great to see that this is part of the accelerator program so early on.
Yeah, I mean, it's massive, right? And one of the things that we've seen is that solo founders, and I've been a solo founder several times, but solo founder are the highest failure group. And part of that is literally that you run out of steam or you get sick or something, really throws you off your game. And that, if you're just a solo founder, the only energy that's driving it is yours. So if something knocks that energy away, then the whole thing starts to crumble. Whereas if it's 3 of you and somebody goes sick, well, there's still 2 people driving it. There's still a combined force happening.
Yeah,
One of the other investors we interviewed, he just likes supply and demand. He likes 2 people back to back. One deals with the outward face, one deals with the inward face, and it's their coordinated effort that really creates the company. Everybody's got, we call it a cheese and wine palette, right? Every investor's got a different cheese and wine palette, different taste for these things.
totally.
All right, so tell me then, what's the secret Marwa sauce? What does your brain do with these things that nobody else really does? Like, when you're getting to that point where, as an investment analyst, you said, yeah, this one's for investment committee, I'm putting it forward, and they can see on your face that you totally want this one to win, right? What's happened there? What's the secret bit that happens for you?
I think for me, obviously, they'd have to meet all the criteria I mentioned before. It has to be B2B SaaS, solving a deep pain, multi-founder experienced teams who know their ideal customer profile. I think the differentiator between companies becomes how much proof. So how much better are they than everyone else that we're seeing? In terms of the pain, what are the proof points that they can share to prove that they're actually addressing a deep pain? Is it revenue? Is it signed contracts? Is it POCs that are in progress? Is it an
It's
MVP?
evidence, right? Evidence rather than talk.
Yes.
That's where you're going with
Yes,
it. Okay, interesting.
exactly. I think the evidence is really what takes it from the hypothetical idea stage to this is a real problem with a team that can really execute. So it's the same with the team. Evidence that they can sell, evidence that they come across well, can communicate the problem, articulate why it's important, quantify the pain itself, and maybe how much money or time it's costing their clients. And evidence that if they have, say, a go to market strategy in place, evidence that they can execute on that, and maybe proof that they've already started to do so.
Okay. You mentioned before that, like, I think do you say 72% of the companies have gone on to do another round after this? So what does Hatch do to help with that stuff? Is there an EIS fund? Is there something else that follows on, or is there a handshake to other firms that sort of look to Hatch for signals, or is there anything you can share around that?
Yeah, so Hatch invests at both the SEIS and the EIS stage, and tickets for SEIS tend to be around 335K. And EIS, it's between 300 to 500K, and we can lead and follow. So a portion of our EIS fund is reserved for the high performing SEIS companies. And it's, I think, both as a founder and investor, it's really great to be part of a company like Haatch that supports founders not just financially, but with hands-on experience that's held within the team as well.
Okay. Fantastic. And are there any other funds that kind of orbit Hatch and say, well, like, you're so good at B2B SaaS that whenever something comes through your SEIS platform, we're just going to go and put some money in as well? Or is that something that hasn't happened yet?
So Hatch has a lot of ongoing relationships with the different funds in the UK and abroad, and we do co-invest with a lot of them as well.
Okay, fantastic. Well, look, you're a bit of an inspiration for me. I've got to be honest, and I've really enjoyed the approach that you've taken to some of our discussions we've had. And I wonder if you've got anything that you would share with a first-time founder who's watching this, because a lot of Canopy's community is first-time founders raising money for the first time. And like, what's your best advice as poacher, gamekeeper, whatever your role is? What do you want to tell them?
I would say that at the early stage in pre-seed and seed, investors are often backing you as much as they're backing your idea. So be cognizant of how you come across when you're talking to investors. Be authentic, show passion, and communicate your vision clearly. Sometimes the investor you're speaking to might not be the best fit for you. So I'd say definitely do your homework and research on the investors themselves. They're choosing you, but you also need to choose them. I think another thing I'd say is know the pain that you solve for your customer and be very, very specific when you talk about it. And last thing, from my founder experience, just build the right community. That can mean advisors, board members, co-founders, people who are rooting for you to succeed. Doing this on your own is a difficult and lonely journey. I mean, it's difficult either way, right? Whether you
Yeah,
have people around you or not. It's a long journey, but if you're resilient, you focus on improving and learning, the right advisors and investors will be drawn to your commitment.
amazing,
But
amazing insights.
I realize you've been asking all the questions. What I'd really like to know is, what do founders struggle with the most when they are raising investment and when they come to you for advice at Canopy?
There's a lot of stuff in there. It's a really good question, Marwa. Thank you for turning it around on me. I love it. Probably one of the hardest things that's really persistent is the co-founder thing. And it's sometimes, I mean, a lot of times it's they don't have a co-founder, so they are a solo founder and they're looking to raise money, and they either know or feel that they should have somebody else in the mix. And we're obviously counseling them to do the same. And then the question is like, where do I get that from? How do I trust that person? How do I then go with that person to the investment committees and so on, and look genuine, like we're actually a team? Because you can't just be a team in name, you've got to be a team when you arrive, right? So, and the timing on that stuff is really hard. Finding those people is really hard. Finding everybody with the right life journey to actually commit into something properly. And an investor will look at that and say, well, you know, if you've got 18 months or 3 years in you, because if you can't survive 18 months at least when I put this money in, then you know, what am I really investing in? So that's a really key bit. A lot of the people that have done first time or are doing fundraising for the first time just don't even know or don't recognize at the start that it's a process, that there are steps to it, and they take a lot of the things personally, right? And to a point that you mentioned before, one of the things we try and encourage a lot, which is a real mindset shift for people in the main, is every investment discussion is a learning opportunity. So it's something I counsel, and I'll sort of say it in my crudest terms, even though it's an investor circle thing, and a few investors may listen to this. I said, I did this on the masters as well as in the Canopy stuff. I know a lot of investors, some of whom, to be honest, are assholes, right? There's a real ego in there. But every single investor I've ever met who's ever done more than one investment has a wisdom. They have a wisdom which, if you are lucky enough to be in the room and you get to ask them questions, a wisdom you can benefit from, because they've seen more things than probably you or I will ever see. Well, not you, because you're seeing things all the time. But you know, as a founder, they've seen more things than you, that look like you, that sound like you. They're trying to do what you're doing. And if you ask the right questions in that room, you can learn so much. And you can see that the first time founders looking at me like I'm insane, right? You know, this is a competition. I've got to win. I've got to get the money. And it's like, no, to your point again, you're picking them and they're picking you. So you've got to get past that. But even if you don't get the money, you can come with a gift from each meeting. And the gift is a wisdom that you couldn't have got to yourself until you get to hindsight. And at the end of your journey, you look back and go, wow, but these guys have all, these investors, they've all got this already. So go and find that, go and use that opportunity to your benefit. And we do counsel that a lot. And the masters in particular, like, we're doing this on an MSc. Part of what we do in the assessments is a pre-seed pitch and a product demo. And we encourage them and we even grade them on how they prepare to ask questions and to run towards the question. Some people are scared, right? They go in front of an investor and like, oh my God, they're asking me questions. Like, no, run towards the question. The question is a really healthy thing. The question means they actually care enough to want to spend even more time with you and actually find an answer
Yeah,
to, right? Run towards it, smile, like the shoulders should open up and you'd be like, wow, thank you so much for this question.
that is great advice.
Hey, so what's next for you? What's next for Hatch? What's the next kind of 6 to 12 months look like?
Next for me is I'm always on the lookout for great founders building in the B2B SaaS space. And I'd love any intros to any great founders who you know who could be raising soon. I think from a personal perspective, I have experienced the pitfalls and the struggles of fundraising as a founder. And one of the one of the things I struggled with the most, I'd say, is receiving no's from investors who are early stage investors, but who tell you you're too early stage. And just as a founder sitting there wondering what early stage even means. And part of me joining Hatch was to get a better understanding of that investor perspective. And I'd very much like to share that with people, share that with founders specifically, shedding light on what investors look for, or specifically what we look for, what early stage means when we do say it, what deep pain means when we say that we look for it, and just trying to help as many founders start their businesses and raise rounds as I can. I appreciate that I had a lot of help building my business for years, and I'd like the opportunity to just help out others as well in any small way that I can.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. Well, and I really appreciate you asking me a question today. Thank you for turning that one around, and I really appreciate it. And for me, it's been brilliant to meet you, and I really wish that we could get you along to a demo night. I know Glasgow is a long way from London, and I almost feel like I should move demo night's location just so they can bring you in as a panelist. But if you happen to be coming to London or Lisbon or Cornwall and you want to be on a panel and you want to come and meet the demos, it will be fabulous to have you there at some point. Thank you so much for
100%.
doing today. It's
Thank you
been
so
an
much,
absolute
Stuart.
blessing. Thank you.
Thank you.